In this video, we're solving simple equations. Basically, these types of equations are what we would call one-step equations. And in order for us to solve an equation, you're essentially working backwards. I like to really say it's kind of like reverse PEMDAS. So instead of having PEMDAS, it's like, I don't know, sad MIP. And that's not entirely true, but I hope you get the idea. We're working backwards. Where PEMDAS, you always go, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. This one, I don't feel like making up a silly sentence, but let's just call it sad MIP, because I like sad MIP. I like that. I'll remember sad MIP. I'm sad MIP. Some basic things to remember when you're solving equations, and this is just really basic things. This is not everything that you need to know when solving massive equations. But these three are Mr. Lewis's main rules to always follow. It's just something that's always helped me. The first one is to simplify each side of the equation. Basically, I will look at one side and see if I can simplify it as best as I possibly can and make it easier for me to read. Two, after I've done simplifying the sides of equation, so some basic things to remember when you are solving equations. First off is your equation. If you simplify each side, do that first. It's going to save you a huge headache later. Try to do that as much as you possibly can. Two, your main job in solving equations is to get the variable alone. And to do this, you undo any mathematical processes. For example, if you see an addition, you need to get rid of it by subtracting. All right? You do the opposite. And we'll show you that in a little bit more detail. Three, this is a big one. Whatever you do on one side of the equation, you must do the same to the other side. You have to keep the equation balanced, okay? Because if you don't do it to the other side, the equation is not going to be solved correctly. So whatever you do to one side, if you subtract from one side of the equation, you must subtract on the other side. And so these are some very basic rules to keep in mind. Now, with that said, let's just kind of talk about a few problems here. This first one is we're solving equations by using solving equations using addition or subtraction. We have f plus 16 equals -2. My job is this. First off, let's see if we can simplify each side of the equation. So this side right here says f plus 16. Is there anything I can do with this? No, there's not. F and 16 cannot be added together, so I can't do anything. I look at the other side of the equation. This says -32. There's nothing more I can do with that. So now it comes to this part. Get the variable alone. So here's my variable. I have a variable named f. I am trying to get it by itself. And the way I need to do that is using SADMAP. All right? All right, so that's just a way of doing it, all right, just to help you. So you're going to reverse it. We're going to try to get rid of any subtraction and addition. Then we're going to try to get rid of any division and multiplication. Then we're going to try to get rid of any exponents and try to get rid of parentheses. So using SADMAP, what can I get rid of? Well, I can get rid of this addition. How can I get rid of this addition? According to those basic things I told you to remember, in order to undo something, in this case, I'm adding. In order to get rid of adding, I have to do its opposite, which is subtract. So to get rid of adding, I simply subtract. And this goes to that third rule. Whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. So what happens is I have a 16, take away 16. This cancels out and becomes 0. So I can just write f down by itself. And now I have -32 minus 16. Well, I can do some math, but we can also remember -32 minus 16. We can review our addition and integers. So we would say negative 32 plus a negative 16 because I keep change change. And this gives me negative 48. All right. And here's the thing. Could I have done this? Absolutely. All right. But I also want you to be able to do this by hand, because if you know this procedure, then a calculator can help you. If you don't know how to do SADMEP, the calculator is not going to be very useful to you. All right, so number 2. We have fractions. All right, so what do? Well, we follow the same rules. Nothing is changing. I'm trying to follow that same procedure. 1, can I simplify one side? 1/2 plus x. No, I can't do anything with that. Can I simplify this? Well, this is as simple as I can get, negative 3/4. So what's next? I'm going to get this variable alone. How do I do that? SADMEP. All right, so is there any addition and subtraction? Yes, but here's the thing. I want you to look at this guy. I'm trying to get the x by itself, so what I'm trying to get rid of is this one. All right, I'm not worried about this. So look at this. This says 1/2, but it's not just any 1/2, it's a positive 1/2. So technically there's a little plus right there. So how do I get rid of a positive 1/2? How do I get rid of it? Well, I do the opposite. What's the opposite of positive? Negative. What's the opposite of addition, which is what this technically is as a positive? It's subtract 1/2. And I do that on both sides. I'm going to write it over here like this. What happens? This goes away. So now I have x is equal to negative 3/4 minus 1/2. Well, I cannot do this currently in this way, so I need to change my denominator, find my greatest common denominator. In this case, it's going to be 4. So I can rewrite it as x is equal to negative 3 over 4 minus 2/4. And when I simplify this, it's going to give me negative 5/4 when I solve this. Don't believe me? Let's find out. So I'm going to go negative 3. This one's a different one. 3/4 minus 1/2. And when I get it, I get negative 1 1/4, which happens to be negative 5/4 simplified into a mixed number. All right, number 3. So, same concept, simplify each side. So let's look at this. This says z minus the absolute value of 7. Well, let's go ahead and simplify this. The absolute value of negative 7 is 7. So I'm just going to rewrite this as z minus 7 equals 16. And there's nothing I can do on this side. Now, how do I get rid of, now I go into solve my variable and get it alone. How do I do that? I need to get rid of this guy. How do I get rid of a minus 7? I do the opposite. I do the opposite of subtraction, and in this case, it's a plus. All right? And I do that on both sides. That gives me z is equal to 25. Very quick. All right? So what did I do? 1, I simplified my sides, and I got z minus 7 equals 16. I know I needed to get rid of the minus 7, so I added, and I did it on both sides. Now, I'm going to give you this one as an extra. It says n plus 3 pi equals 5 pi. Now, what's my variable? This is my variable, so what am I trying to get rid of? I'm trying to get rid of the entire 3 pi. All right? So the best thing for me to do is to remove this entire piece. So how would I get rid of a plus 3 pi? Well, I do the opposite. Well, I subtract 3 pi. And I do it on both sides. That gives me n is equal to, well, what do you think 5 pi minus 3 pi is? Well, if you think of it this way, there's 5 pies that I can eat, and I ate 3 pies. Technically, how many pies do I have left? I have 2 pies left. All right, think of it like that. 5 pi minus 3 pi equals 2 pi. All right. Now, the next piece we have to ask ourselves is how to do multiplication and division. It's pretty easy. It's the exact same thing. So if you see something that's being divided, I do the opposite and I multiply. If I see something that's being multiplied, I do the opposite and I divide. In this case, I'm trying to get x by itself. There's nothing more I can do to this side to simplify it, so I need to get x by itself. by doing the opposite to 8 here. Since 8 is dividing here, x divided by 8, I'm going to multiply each side by 8. What happens? This cancels out here, and I simply get x is equal to 24. Now, I'm using a term that you've probably heard before, but I want to just mention it out. And I said canceled out. What is happening here? I'm going to write it over to the side. I have 8, and then I'm multiplying it by x over 8. Well, when you do this, I'm taking the whole number 8 and multiplying it by x over 8. Well, how do I write 8 as a fraction? I write it as 8 over 1, okay? And if I were to work this all out, it gives me 8x divided by 8, all right? Well, what do you think's happening to these two guys? Well, 8 divided by 8 equals 1x. Well, do I need that 1 there? No, so I can simply write x. So this is just a little review that you should understand. When I mean I cancel out something, it's just I don't have to do all these steps. When I'm multiplying this number by this denominator and these two are the same, they cancel out and make the number 1. And then I just do the same thing over here. 3 times 8 is 24. Now let's look at this one. I have pi times h equals 3 pi. My job is to find what h is. Well, how do I do that? Well, notice that I have pi and h, they're being multiplied. I need to get rid of pi. How do I get rid of pi? I divide it on both sides. Well, pi divided by pi gives me 1, so I could say 1h, or I can just say h. All right, which would be easier, okay, is equal to, well, 3 pi divided by pi, these cancel out and leave me with just 3. Last problem, 3/4 times x equals -2. All right, so there's two ways of doing this. I'm going to do one way, which is the longer way, and then I'm going to show you the shortcut. And again, this probably is a little bit review for you, but we're going to do it anyway. 3 over 4, or 3/4 x equals -2. And since this is a fraction and it's multiplying, in order to get rid of it, I have to divide it. Okay? What happens? 3/4 divided by 3/4, that cancels out, and that gives me x is equal to -2 divided by 3/4. Okay? Now, what do I do here? Well, remember that when we're working with fractions, the best thing to do is to change everything into improper fractions and just work it that way. So I could say x is equal to -2 over 1 divided by 3 over 4. So now we've got something we can work with. Now, you should remember this when working with fractions, the simple term keep, change, flip. And I can rewrite this, and I'm running out of room here, as x is equal to -2 over 1. I'm keeping the first fraction. I'm changing it from division to multiplication, and then I'm flipping my fraction to what's called the reciprocal. And now I can multiply like normal. X is equal to -2 times 4 is -8. 1 times 3 is equal to 3. So my answer for this is x is equal to -8/3. Now, what I did is I just followed the same rule I was doing. Instead of to get rid of the multiplication of the fraction, I divided the fraction. However, there is an easier way of doing this, especially when it comes to, and this rule only works with fractions. I'm going to kind of write the same problem over again. 3/4 x is equal to -2. Now, in order to get rid of this 3/4 x, I could do just like I did a while ago and divide on both sides, or I can go ahead and do something called multiply by the reciprocal. Look what I'm doing here, okay? The reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3, and we did that a while ago in the last step of here, but this time we're doing it at the very beginning. Why am I doing that? What's happening is I'm actually getting ready to cancel out this entire fraction. Check this out. 4 times 3 gives me 12. 3 times 4 gives me 12. times x equals, and then I work this out, and it's going to give me the exact same thing as over here, equals negative 8/3. I'm just going to kind of skip those little steps here to get to this part. Well, what's 12 divided by 12? It's 1. So x is simply negative 8/3. And so how did I do that? I multiplied by what's called the reciprocal. Okay, and I think I spelled that right, making sure. Close enough. All right. So what I want you to do now is I want you to try 1 through 9 on your own, and pause the video, come back, and I'll give you the answers. So here are your answers for the problems. I'm not going to work these out for you. I think you've pretty much got an understanding of how to solve very simple equations. However, you know how to find me if you don't. So check your answers. If you got any questions, you know what to do. And as for the next two, I'm going to leave these to you as challenge questions, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.